So you're here. I'm assuming this. If I'm wrong, please correct me in the comments. But you're here because you want to know more about Formula E, and that's exactly what you're going to get from this video. So well done for clicking on, and welcome to my beginner's guide to Formula E. Now, if you're new to my channel, I usually cover Formula 1 as as the title suggests, F1 reviews, but also on this channel I love to do Formula E. It's a sport that I've followed since its first ever season. We're now moving into Season 5 with brand new generation cars, which you can see on screen there. That is the Neo car. We'll talk about the teams and drivers a little bit later on. So I feel that it's about time that I do a beginner's guide, and with the new season starting this December, like I say, with the brand new generation of cars, brand new drivers, brand new teams, I felt this is a perfect time to introduce some of you guys to Formula E for the very first time. And some of you casual fans, if you want to learn a little bit more about the sport, then hopefully this should be the guide for you. If there is any queries, any questions that I don't address in the video, please chuck them down in the comment section below, and hopefully I can answer them as quickly as possible for you guys. And if there's questions that keep on cropping up, then I can make a separate video covering those questions. So then, Formula E. Where to start? Well, we're only in Season 5. 4 seasons have been completed, so probably have enough time to do a quick little history lesson for you, just so you can get a bit of background, a bit of grounding for the championships. So back in 2014, a very, very smart businessman, a very clever businessman, Alejandro Agag, set up the Formula E World Championship, an all-electric racing single-seater series similar to Formula 1, if you know what Formula 1 is. However, it would not use petrol or diesel engines. It would instead use electric hybrid power cars. The noise is very different, and I will say straight away it takes some getting used to, but the racing so far has been incredible. That man on screen there is Mr. Alejandro Agag, a real spearhead in the environmental development market. He really is a force for change, not only in motorsport but in the world in general. And the first 4 seasons we've had of Formula E have been incredible, ever since the first ever race in Hong Kong, where we saw an extremely enormous crash, and it's definitely a race I would recommend you watch. He has been there spearheading this championship and really is now putting it on the market. If you weren't aware, it is very similar to a spec series, is Formula E. The majority of the components on the car are the same for each team. So if you're not aware what a spec series is, it generally means that, like I say, most of the car's parts are regulated. So every single team has to run the same part. A quick little history on the drivers. The man on screen there, Nelson Piquet Jr., was your Season 1 World Champion. Sebastian Buemi was your Season 2 World Champion. Both ex-Formula 1 drivers, Piquet with Renault, Buemi with Toro Rosso for a period. Lucas di Grassi, another former Formula 1 driver, he also was a world champion back in Season 3. And last season, in Season 4, your world champion was none other than Jean-Eric Vergne. Now, if you think about it, this means that every single Formula E World Champion has been an ex-Formula 1 driver so far, which is quite an interesting little statistic. But the one I find more interesting is that every single year of Formula E, we have had a different World Champion. The maximum World Champions any driver has had is 1, which is an incredible feat. And this year, looking at pre-season, it looks like that could change once again. Team Championships has been a little bit of a different story, with Renault taking the first 3 championships, and last season Audi wrapping it up at the final race of the season by 3 points. It was an amazing year last year, and I'm thinking and I'm hoping that this year will be even better with these new generation of cars, the new huge talent pool that has come into Formula E. It really looks like Season 5, the 2019 season, is going to be the best yet. Now, just before we jump into the season layout, I do want to mention that something that people get a bit confused with is that if you go and do research for Formula E and you type in the 2018 season, it might look a bit confusing. And the reason for that is Strangely, Formula E takes place over 2 years. So the first ever season was 2014-2015. The second season was 2015-2016, then 2016-2017. Last season was 2017-2018, and this season is 2018-2019, but only one race this year is taken in 2018. So I personally believe they're now going to start perhaps after 2019, then do a 2020 season and make it a little bit more logistically easy, just like Formula 1 does it, where it's just a season each year. Because I think for a casual fan like yourself, or a new, I suppose, body to the sport, it is a little bit confusing about that. So this season starts in 2018, ends 2019, but it'll be more commonly referred to as Season 5. Right then, that's a little bit of history. 5 minutes of I get to know you, welcome, hello to Formula E. Let's get into some real stuff then, because you're not here just to have, willy-nilly faff around with Formula E. You're here because you want to learn more about the sport. So when it gets to December 15th, the first race of the season, you know pretty much what is going on. So then, let's start with the season layout. Now, in this section, I've got a few things written down, starting with the calendar. 13 races, 12 countries, 5 continents. It's no it's no small calendar in Formula E. It's not quite the 21 of Formula 1. However, 13 is still a significant amount of races, starting off on the 15th of December in Adrijaya in Saudi Arabia. That's the first race of the season. And then, as you can see in Morocco, the second round going straight into 2019 in January the 12th. Chile, Santiago, a new circuit layout for that one this year. Mexico City runs at the exact same track as the Formula 1 circuit. Hong Kong, China has been almost a veteran circuit now of Formula E, and Sanya, China is a brand new circuit for this season. Rome, Italy is known as one of the star-studded circuits of the Formula E calendar, as well as Paris. Rome did its first race last year and was a particularly fantastic track, and one that I'm really looking forward to going back to again. Round 9, it's back on the circuit. Monaco, that is the big one there. Germany was one of the strange races last year that a driver from that country actually won the race. That happened on 2 occasions, with Jean-Eric Vergne winning in Paris and Abt winning in Berlin. Switzerland is back for round 11, and then the New York double header, if you can see there, the 13th and 14th of July rounds off the season, and last year that was the case, and it was a particularly interesting weekend. So how does each weekend break down? Now, something you might have noticed from that calendar is each Formula E race takes place over one single day, and each of those days is actually a Saturday, which makes it very easy viewing, especially if you've got Formula 1 on the Sunday. That is a very helpful thing that I found last year and last season in Formula E, and it was great having a Formula E race on the Saturday, and then the Sunday a Grand Prix race. So that was something that I particularly loved. And just a quick note there, a Formula E race is actually known as an E-Prix rather than a Grand Prix, and that's something that they might mention, a little bit of terminology there that hopefully you don't get confused with. So it takes place on a single day, and on the Saturday what that means is in the morning we have 2 practice sessions. The first is a 45-minute practice session, and then we have a half-an-hour practice session a little bit later on. We also have the shakedown for the cars on the Friday, where it's just a little chance to make sure all the cars are working, but they post that live on their YouTube channel, especially if it's a big race weekend, then they'll make that very predominant on their channel. They do it every race, I will say that there, make that clear. And I probably would recommend maybe watching it once or twice, especially early on in the season, just so you can get a little bit of an idea what's going on over the weekend there. But that's what happens in the morning. Then in the afternoon we have qualifying, and then later on, further into the afternoon, we have the E-Prix. So let's break down qualifying then, because if you're a Formula 1 fan, you know it's done in 3 sections, qualifying 1, 2 and 3. Formula E does it very differently, and if you've never seen Formula 1 or Formula E before, I imagine you'll find it a little bit easier to pick up. So qualifying, what that is, that decides the order the cars start for the E-Prix, and the guy who starts at the very front, that is known as pole position. So that's a little bit more terminology I can throw at you there. But it's a little bit strange, is the Formula E way of doing it. So bear with me. So the overall session lasts 1 hour. And before qualifying starts, the drivers are divided up into groups of roughly 5 or 6. Now, this year we have 11 teams, so they can't divide it up by 4. So we haven't quite seen how they're going to do it, but I imagine there'll be 2 groups of 5, 2 groups of 6. I think that's what they'll end up going for. And in those groups, they've all got 6 minutes to set a time. So 5 drivers will go out, and between them they have 6 minutes on the circuit to post a time. Now, what this does is it completely throws up a crazy looking grid, especially if there's changing conditions, which they usually are, with the track getting what is known as rubbered in. So as more cars are driving on, the circuit gets a little bit more grippier, so then drivers that go out a little bit later on, they can post quicker times even if their lap isn't quite as clean. So hopefully you understand that there. But these groups go out, and eventually we have a full list of times with all the groups combined. It is each driver in the group. It's not the group combined time. It's each driver within that group. So hopefully I've explained that there. But then top 5 overall drivers. So yeah, it could be from any group. The top 5 times, they go into something which is called the Super Pole. And that's basically a final sort of group session with those top 5 times. They go in and battle it out for pole position, each taking it in turn to do a lap. And I actually love the Formula E way of qualifying. It's something really different, mixes up the grid incredibly, and has really made the qualifying event a staple of the sport. It can be even more exciting than the race on some occasions. It's that incredible, and I rate the Formula E races particularly highly, and it's something that in Formula 1 you might give a pass, but I would beg you to try it in Formula E, because it really is something special, and you can really see some fantastic stories within qualifying. So that's qualifying then. Hopefully that was all as clear as I possibly could make it, but if not, like I say, put it down in the comments section, because I will be responding to any questions or queries, because I think that's the whole point of this video, getting you guys into Formula E a little bit, but also teaching you about what to expect when you watch it. So the race then, a maximum of 6 kilometres and a maximum of 1 hour. Now, the aim of the race is to be about 40 minutes. It was 50 minutes last season, but they're dialing it back a little bit, trying to make it a little bit easier for new fans like yourself to digest a little bit, and hopefully should make the racing a little bit more exciting with a little bit more pressure because of the time constraints. Now, the E-Prix begins with a standing start. So what that means is that, similar to Formula 1, they are stationary when they get going. So some sports, I believe, some of the oval sort of series in America, NASCAR, IndyCar, they start the race while they're already moving. So Formula E does not do that. It does not have a formation lap in Formula E. What actually happens is they have something that's known as a dummy grid, where they'll actually start in the grid position directly behind them, and then they'll roll forward into their actual grid position to then start the race. So rather than doing a full lap of the circuit, they just go forward 100 metres or so, just to make sure everything is working. And because of the small nature and time length of the race, there's no mandatory pit stops. Now, this is something they've added for this year. This wasn't in the sport last year or any of the other years, because the previous cars we have used in Formula E couldn't actually do a full-length race. The battery was not big enough, and so they'd have to change car halfway through. Now, this year, like I mentioned, these brand new cars can make the full distance race, and they won't be swapping halfway through the race. Brand new rookie Pascal Wehrlein has been quoted to say this is one of the main reasons he joined Formula E, that there is no crazy car changing gimmicks, and his car is his car. And I think that's a perfect way of putting it, because it did cause a lot of confusion, the swapping cars, and now we know which drivers are where on the circuit. Pit stops are still a thing, but the tyres should be able to last the full race, so there's no degrading tyres quite like there is in Formula 1. Formula E tyres are supplied by Michelin. No refuelling, obviously, because they are electric cars, so they can come in if there's damage, replace a front wing, and if a tyre is needed to be changed, that should be available to them. But during the race, we should see no pit stops. Now, I can't really comment too much about this, because we've not seen a Gen 2 car race yet. This is going to be the first ever race with these brand new cars. These pictures that you're seeing on screen are the brand new cars. They did a testing in Valencia last week, and that was their pre-season test, so we'll see no more of them now until the first race in Saudi Arabia on December the 15th. Now, something that I'll mention a little bit later on that is highly involved in the race is something known as fan boost, a concept that I'm not a huge fan of, pardon the pun. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of fan boost at all, and I think it's something that they'll get rid of eventually in Formula E, but for now, it's in the sport, but I'll cover that a little bit later on in the rules and regulations section. So, just to finally wrap up on the layout for the race, what replaces pit stops then? Because there's got to be something that, well, spices up the racing, I suppose. And what it is that they're going to introduce this season is 2 power modes for the car. Now, it's this idea that there's sort of this hyper power mode. Again, we've not heard a lot about it so far because the season's not fully started and we haven't seen it in a race yet, so I might cover another video based on that sort of topic once the season has started, once I have a better picture, once the media has a better picture what it's going to be. But basically what should happen is when these drivers are running this ultra high power mode, the halo, so if you can see on the helmet there of Daniel Abt, that little bar that goes over his head and goes in front of his face, that is the halo. Now that should light up. So it should light up with LED flashy lights, so you can almost see on that halo there at the top, the little dots. Those are the lights, and they will light up. They're obviously not lit on that particular car, and that'll indicate that their high power mode is on. And what this should do is increase overtakes and increase efficiency and battery management from the drivers. You can just see it there again on the Techeetah car, the little dots at the top of the halo. And if you can't quite understand what I'm on about, if you look really closely just above his helmet, that there is those little dots around that bar around his head. Something that, like I say, has the potential to really spice up the racing, but we haven't tested it yet, so we're just going to have to wait and see, unfortunately. So that pretty much is the race sort of rundown, what goes on over the weekend and during the race. Sorry for the voice crack. Now, what is it that the drivers are actually going for then? So, like Formula 1, they're going for the Drivers' Championship. Also, like Formula 1, they're going for the Constructors' Championship. So, the Drivers' Championship is basically after each race, the drivers get given a certain amount of points depending on where they finish. The driver that wins the overall championship is the one with the most points at the end of the season. The Constructors' Championship is the term us motorsport fans give for the team's championship. So, in each team, there's 2 drivers. Those 2 drivers' points combined within the team are put up in a total and compared against each team. And then, obviously, the team with the most points wins the Constructors' or the team's trophy, put it in layman's terms. So, the point system then. First place, 25 points. Second, 18 points. Third, 15. Fourth is 12. Fifth is 10. Sixth is 8. Seventh is 6. 8th is 4. 9th is 2. And 10th is 1. Everyone in 11th place down to 22nd place gets a big fat 0 points. Pole position, however, gives you points. So in Formula 1, there's no points awarded for qualifying, but in Formula E there is. And the man on pole position gets 3 points. So that's just between an 8th and 9th place finish, but like we saw in almost every year of Formula E so far, those points would do enough to swing the championship. So it really does count. And there's also 1 point awarded to fastest lap, but to get that point, you also have to be in the top 10. So it's a little bit more of a difficult one to understand, that one. But if you get the fastest lap of the race and you finish within the top 10, you do get an extra bonus point, which is very nice if you've got the fastest lap and you've had a nice race and finished in the top 10. So hopefully that should clear up the point system then, which nicely should move us on to the teams and drivers, something that I'm sure that you guys, being new fans, don't really have a huge idea about. Obviously, you know about a couple of drivers. I imagine in Formula E, I've already mentioned a fair few, about 5 or 6 through this video already. But now I'm going to go through each team, a little bit of a, well, I don't want to say a history, but a little fact check for you guys. Just a real basic sort of knowledge, because the teams and drivers is a big video I want to cover, going almost through an in-depth version of the teams and drivers, but this is just a little snippet, a little sprinkle of the teams and drivers for you guys, and to give you a little bit of an idea of who to support, because I find with a new series, one of the key things when you're starting a new series, especially a motorsport or any sport, is that you want to know who to support, who to follow, who to cheer on within the sport, and who to give the fan boost to, which, like I mentioned, I'll talk about a little bit later on. So let's go through each team and each of the driver pairings. So starting off then with the reigning team world champions, Audi. What a season they had last year, especially in the second season. But this team have been here since season 1. 10 wins overall, 35 podiums, and their drivers are Daniel Abt and Lucas di Grassi. Lucas di Grassi is definitely one I would recommend you guys keep an eye out for. This man, the season 3 world champion, fighting for it in Season 1 and Season 2, came runner-up last year. I would regard him as one of the best on the grid. Daniel Abt, his teammate, another really impressive driver. Either of those two with Audi, I would consider you guys thinking about supporting. They've been fantastic. Di Grassi is from Brazil. Abt is from Germany. A great pair, and I imagine they'll be in the title fight once again this season. So if you're looking for a team to support with a bit of history that can go on and probably will win at least one race this year, I would recommend you look at Audi. Moving on then to BMW Andretti. A new, fully fleshed out partnership this year. BMW fully committing to Formula E for the very first time. Their drivers are British rookie Alexander Sims and Portuguese man Antonio Felix da Costa, the only man with one single win in Formula E. And BMW Andretti themselves have never really, well, I suppose really pushed on in Formula E, never hugely delivered, but within testing, this team look like the team to beat. And I will do a predictions video, but if I'm going to say it early doors, Antonio Felix da Costa is a man I think is in with a huge shout of winning the Formula E title this year. Red Bull young driver, he used to be a GP2 winner. He looks really strong, and like I say, I think he could be the first Formula E world champion that actually isn't an ex-Formula 1 driver, so look out for BMW and Felix da Costa. Now moving on to Envision Virgin Racing. I've just called them Virgin there, but they are officially known as Envision Virgin Racing, and that means officially they've not actually won a race before, but they have indeed won a race, got multiple podiums, multiple pole positions. They are driven by Robin Frins, someone who sat out last year but has competed in Formula E before, and the British superstar in Formula E, Sam Bird. If you want to support a British driver, I would highly recommend Sam Bird, fighting for the championship almost in every single season. Just missed out last year to Jean-Eric Vergne. He has been, well, is arguably the biggest superstar in Formula E that hasn't driven in Formula 1. He is a true ambassador of the sport, is one of my favourite drivers and someone I would highly recommend for you guys. Virgin have been with Citroën DS Power. They're now moving to Audi Power this year, so it's still a few question marks on how they're going to do this year. Now, moving on to Dragon, the American team. Now, the livery you can see on screen there, so a livery is the colour scheme, if you were not aware. That's not actually what they're supposed to be running come the 15th of December, and they've only actually confirmed one driver so far, and that's Jose Maria Lopez, the Argentine. Always kicks up a fuss and is always an enjoyment to watch. The team officially have had 2 wins before, both coming from Jerome D'Ambrosio, a team that I suppose have always been in that midfield and I doubt would really come out of the blocks this year and really challenge, but they, I suppose, are one of the 2 main American teams within the sport, being themselves and Andretti. So if you're an American and you fancy looking out for an American team, maybe Dragon is the team that piques your interest. But like I say, they still haven't confirmed their second driver. So when they do that, a video will be coming up on my channel, and maybe then it'll be a driver that you particularly like and would love to support. Now, a team that I'm sure many people will be supporting now in their 3rd year of Formula E, this will be, or 3rd season, Jaguar. Their drivers are Season 1 world champion Nelson Piquet Jr., ex-Formula 1 driver for Renault Sport, and Mitch Evans, a GP2 hopeful. He was in GP2, performed particularly well, never really had a chance at Formula 1, however, has excelled in Formula E so far. This will be his third season in Formula E, managed to pick up a pole position at the end of last year, and Jaguar, a little bit like Renault in Formula 1, since coming into the sport, so Renault from a couple of years ago in Formula 1, this comparison is, each year are pushing on further and further up the field. And last year they managed to get their first podium and pole position, courtesy of Mitch Evans. And I would really expect them to be fighting for the title this year. I really would. And so Jaguar would be a team that I would recommend looking out for. And Mitch Evans is one of my personal favourite drivers. I have quite a few, I will say. Now, Mahindra, a team that have gone through a difficult winter, I suppose, and will be a team that I will love talking about in my fully fleshed out talk about the teams and drivers. But Mahindra, multi-winning team. Their star driver, Felix Rosenqvist, has left Formula E this year for an IndyCar drive, which is a huge shock for the championship, but his reliability and failure to find another driver with another team has resulted in him leaving the sport. Now, Mahindra have replaced him really well. They also had Nick Heifeld last year, but this year they have Jerome D'Ambrosio, ex-Formula 1 driver, and someone I think could easily win the World Championship this year, Pascal Wehrlein. If you guys have seen my Formula 1 videos, I rate this guy so highly. I think he could be my new favourite in Formula E. Really watch out for this guy. Mahindra, the Indian team, will be driven by Wehrlein and D'Ambrosio, and a team I'll be keeping a close eye on this year. Neo, almost like the Force India of Formula E, I would say. And if you're new to Formula E or Formula 1, that means they're sort of the underdog team. Punch above their weight more often than not, especially due to British driver Oliver Turvey. If you love an underdog story, he is the one to look out for. A couple of podiums last year, and like I say, calling him an underdog, probably a little bit, I suppose, disrespectful, because he's a solid driver. But some of these results he pulled out of absolutely nowhere, and he didn't have a particular quick teammate last year, but this year he's got the very high-rated youngster Tom Dillman making his full return back to Formula E. Did a few races last year as almost a stand-in driver, but he's making a full return this year, a driver I was really impressed with last year. And Neo, those colours I think look so nice on that car. I think it's the nicest looking car. Maybe not the quickest team, but we don't know until the season starts. Now, last year's team runners-up, and the team with Jean-Eric Vergne, last year's world champion, is Techeetah. Their drivers are known as Gendre. That wasn't me saying something stupid. It is Gendre. That is sort of the love story, the love name between the two teammates, Jean-Eric Vergne and Andre Lotterer. Both ex-Formula 1 drivers. Andre Lotterer did one-off race. I can't remember which race that was. I think it was Brazil 2013 for Caterham, but that does technically make him an ex-Formula 1 driver. Jean-Eric Vergne was in the running for a Red Bull Formula 1 seat, but Daniel Ricciardo was preferred for that move, and unfortunately, Vergne left for Formula E. He made the decision to switch to Formula E because his prospects in Formula 1 weren't looking that great, despite being a fantastic driver. Both of these guys are quick. Both of them were on the podium last year. Andre Lotterer didn't quite get a win, but is a multiple WEC world champion, and both of them are highly skilled and rated drivers. And Techeetah, a beautiful livery, would recommend them. Now, Venturi, a big switch up from Venturi this year. Don't worry, there's only 3 more teams, including Venturi. There's only 11 teams on the grid, but I wanted to do a quick talk of all of them. Venturi. Eduardo Mortara raced for them last year. He stays this year. A team that had a real chance of a win last year due to Mortara, back at the very first race of the season in Hong Kong. However, he made a little mistake and never really looked like the same driver after that. He came in and out due to different series, but this year is fully committed with Susie Wolff, the team principal, and Felipe Massa, ex-Ferrari driver, multiple Formula 1 winner. The biggest name to ever enter Formula E is joining Venturi next year, and of course, Felipe Massa. Keep your eye out for him. He hasn't lost his speed. He has not lost his talent. And I reckon he'll be in with a chance for the title. I don't think he's the favourite, but in with a chance. Now, Nissan, brand new team for this season, but not really. Now, what I mean by this is Renault won the Constructors Season 1, 2 and 3. Last year, it was confirmed that they'd be leaving in Season 5. So they didn't really do very well last year. And driver Sebastian Buemi, the most successful driver in Formula E history, the most wins of anybody, was their star man at Renault. Didn't get a single win last year. His first year in Formula E without a win. But that Renault team this year has evolved into Nissan. Nissan have bought the majority of that team's assets, including Sebastian Buemi. They are going to be quick, I imagine. Maybe not title contenders. I probably would imagine that's next season. But this year, so with Sebastian Buemi behind the car, you never really know. Season 2 world champion, ex-Formula 1 driver. Alongside him at the moment is Alexander Albon, the man who's second and still with a chance of winning this year's Formula 2. But it looks like he might get a Toro Rosso with a late minute switch, so it's still not confirmed who's going to be that second driver at Nissan. And as you can see now on screen, the final team, HWA Race Lab. And don't get confused by the name, they are Mercedes. Pretty much, which might be a bombshell for some of you Formula 1 fans that wasn't expecting that, but they are Mercedes, and next year they're changing into a fully fleshed out Mercedes team. HWA really are just sort of a name for a Mercedes B team, a bit like Toro Rosso in Formula 1. Really, that's Red Bull's B team, but they're known as Toro Rosso. HWA have Stoffel Van Dorn in the car this year, and Gary Paffett, both rookies. Van Dorn, GP2 world champion, Formula 1 McLaren driver, a really high-rated driver, hasn't really pushed on in Formula 1 like a lot of people would have expected, but I think he is going to be in with a fantastic chance of the championship this year. Gary Paffett has just come off of a DTM championship win. He's a real unknown quantity in Formula E, but both of those guys I would really expect to push on in Formula E. Now, that was your teams and drivers. Now, you've been sat here for quite some time, half an hour I think it is so far, so thank you for sticking this far. But now we're at the rules and regulations. Now, most of them are very, very self-explanatory, so I don't want to bore you with any sort of stupid rules and regulations, but some things we have to go over. So, no crashing, no driving backwards, none of that stupidness. Pit limiter, so in the pit lane, if you do come in, there is a specific sort of speed limit they have to do. Also, illegal blocking is not allowed, so you can't be swerving in front of drivers to stop them overtaking you. You can do one move, but more than one move is shone upon and should not be allowed and could result in a penalty. Now, a penalty, again, pretty self-explanatory. If a driver does a mistake or something that is not in the rule book, they'll be given a time penalty, which basically could result in them driving through the pit lane with the speed limiter, so bringing them back down the grid a little bit, or could involve a time being put on to the end of their race if the penalty is severe enough. Now, obviously, no mandatory pit stops, as I mentioned. What happens if there's a crash? Something that usually crops up. Now, if there's a big crash blocking the circuit, something that can happen is the safety car. And what it is a little BMW drives out and they stop in front of the cars. They'll still go around the circuit, and the car at the front will be a random BMW road car with flashing lights on the top. All the drivers then line up behind the safety car and follow him round until the debris and the crash is cleared. The safety car will then come in and the race will then be resumed. Also, something we can have is a full course yellow. And what this could be is if there's, I don't know, a bit of debris on the circuit, a bit of broken parts off the cars are scattered across the circuit, so there's no real need to bring out the safety car. They'll bring out a full course yellow, and what this means is all the drivers are limited to a specific speedometer, speed limit, and they'll have to drive around at that particular speed, not gaining any sort of time on the driver in front or dropping behind while someone goes onto the track to receive the damage. Now, red flags can also happen. What a red flag is when the race is completely stopped. So this could be a huge incident, completely blocking the circuit. It could be weather that is that bad. It's so dangerous for the drivers to be out there. They've got a red flag. They've got to stop the race. Now, the race can be resumed, but in some cases, the race can be stopped there and then points will be rewarded, depending on how far the race is in or not. And we've not actually seen a full red flag incident yet in Formula E, but in Formula 1, what has happened in the past is if the race is red flagged halfway through, half points have been awarded, but also full points have been awarded as well. So it's a very sort of strange situation with a red flag, but thankfully we've not had that yet in Formula E. And the final couple of sort of things I want to say, there's one tyre compound, so this is more for the Formula 1 fans. So in Formula 1 you've got many different types of tyres, the medium, the hard, the soft, the options, the primes, whatever you want to call them. In Formula E there's just the one. which really spices things up, especially if there's changing weather. So that's something that isn't a huge talking point in Formula E, is the tyres, but I just wanted to say there is one compound of tyres, but if they need to switch, I believe that is a possibility. But again, we haven't ever seen that in Formula E, so that's never needed to happen. Now, something that I mentioned a bit earlier on, the fan boost. Now, what the fan boost is this little gimmick in Formula E where before a race, a couple of days before a race, you can vote for your favourite driver. Now, what that then means is during the race, the driver with the highest amount of votes gets a speed boost. Now, it's a real great way of you giving your favourite driver a boost, and in theory, this should be a fantastic sort of method of getting you guys engaged into Formula E. I'm not a big fan of it, mainly because the same few drivers tend to get it each race, and if it's a driver's home race, they tend to get more of the vote. Now, I do think it's a bit strange in the fact that it makes it a little bit like a popularity contest. That being said, come the race day, the fan boost on many occasions has produced some amazing bits of racing, and when you put it like that, that's never a negative. So try the fan boost, that's what I've done, and I'm still getting used to it. Still find it strange, and I think it still needs a bit of tweaking, but it is something that you should be aware of in Formula E, that you can vote for your favourite driver to give them a little bit of a boost during one race of Formula E. It's only a one-time use, and generally it's only used down the straight or something, so it's not a huge advantage, but it is an advantage nonetheless. And I think that should be it. That is your guide to Formula E, your beginner's guide, your Formula E for dummies, if you will. Hopefully, I've answered all your questions, but if not, like I say, put them down in the comments below. I will be answering them, and if there is too many queries about a specific incident, then I will make a new video covering those. If you are interested in Formula E and you watch this just because you wanted to check up on your knowledge, then on this channel, I know it's called F1 Reviews, but I love doing Formula E content, do race reviews every time. We also have the Formula E show that should be back on a weekly basis now. Now Formula E is starting up again and news is flowing back in. If you are new around here, we also do Formula 1 content, of course. The final question I can hear people asking that I do want to sort of tell you about is where to watch Formula E. In the UK, it's on Spike TV, which is a channel. You will find it. I didn't know it existed, but Channel 5 it is also on sometimes. BT Sport is going to be on this year for the very first year, and also Eurosport. But the best coverage by far is the Freeview Spike TV. Jack Nicholls is the commentator. David Coulthard also did a one-off race last year. That is the big names on that one, and I think after looking at all of them, that has been the best one. But BT Sport could surprise me, but Channel 5 I think I'll be sticking with for this year. Any other nations, if you are from any country outside the UK, please look in the comment section below, and I have, well, the description I should say below, and I've put the link to where the TV channels are for Formula E in your region. Hopefully I've answered all your questions, everyone. You've listened to my voice now for quite some time, so if I were you, I'd go away and maybe rethink. I wouldn't want to listen to my voice for this amount of time, but I do want to say thank you for watching. As always, it means a lot, and hopefully I've given you guys something back a little bit, helping you get to know Formula E. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.